In the synagogues of Eastern Europe, a most unusual custom was observed on the evening of Yom Kippur. Prior to the chanting of Kol Nidrei, each congregant was expected to approach another and ask forgiveness. Each person would move to another and whisper, Zait mir machel, please forgive me. Upon hearing the request, the listener would respond, Ich bin dir machel, I forgive you. Immediately after this reply, the individual would whisper to the person who he had just forgiven and say, Zait mir machel, please forgive me. People who loved each other and bitter enemies alike would take part in this particular tradition. If two people refused to draw near, a neutral party would intervene and physically force one or the other to take the initiative. Hurts were not always healed, but lesser arguments were assuaged. Antagonisms were sometimes softened, and insensitivities were absolved. Tonight, Selichot takes the place of this ceremony.
Part of Selichot is getting ready for our holidays, turning inward as we just learned. Part of it is how we change how we look on the outside as well. And so symbolically, as we do that, we remind ourselves of what we want within. So we change our clothing, traditionally wearing white on Yom Kippur. We wear white robes as clergy. We change all of our Torahs to their white coverings as well. And so one thing we do as a part of Selichot, a Shir Shalom tradition, is that you all help in that process. We invite B'nai Mitzvah families to come help us dress the Torahs, to change them for their everyday garments in a sense, from what they wear for the rest of the year to what they wear for the high holidays. And in doing that, as we call each family up to hold a Torah and help us dress it, we'll tell you a little story about those Torahs, because for those who've been through the bar bat mitzvah process, you know that as you get close in that last month to read Torah, you get to choose which Torah you'll read. So we want you to know it's part of our history. It's part of who we are as a community. It's part of what we learn and appreciate as well. And so you'll hear a little bit of that story on this night too. Please rise.
So as we change those covers, I ask as I call your family if you'll come forward to Rabbi Moskowitz to help him change the cover. We begin with Emily Rosenberg, the daughter of Dr. Beth and Dr. Bradley Rosenberg.
We begin with the Alt New Torah, the Old New Torah. This Torah comes from Berlin, from Nazi Germany. It was written in 1942 by a scribe. The scribe wrote 3 Torahs and hid them away. Got it? Hid them away in a barn, and he ultimately was captured and murdered by the Nazis. But the Torahs were discovered in 1998, the year Temple Shir Shalom was celebrating our 10th anniversary. And so the German Jewish community wanted these Torahs to come to a new synagogue to celebrate what they had lost, but what could be for our future. And so this Torah, at the age of just under 60 years, came to Temple Shir Shalom in 1999, brand new, never having been read before. So it's called the Alt New, the Old New Torah, because although a little bit in age, really brand new for us as we brought it back to life and tell its story, and now celebrates its 25th year with us as well.
Charlie Grelnick, the son of Susan and Dave Grelnick.
Dave, if you'll take this. Like I said, our order isn't really working so well because I want to change some of the coverings around. This Torah, of course, is our youngest Torah. It's our 25th anniversary Torah, the Ziph family Torah, that many of us in the sanctuary tonight helped scribe, wrote letters in it. Remember when you wrote a letter in this Torah? The Groundlets wrote the letter Hey. So, for those who don't know the story, the Torah was mostly written in Jerusalem. But 352 of the letters were written here at Temple Shir Shalom on this bima by our members with a scribe holding the quill with him and filling in the letter with him. A beautiful tradition that we did in writing a Torah together. So this Torah literally is just, 6 years old or so for us at the temple. It was over a year-long process. And something we celebrate in having that with us, and something we'll always have with us as well, uniquely in creation in that way too.
We invite up Ari and Leah Katinsky with their dads, Brian Katinsky and Michael Newman, and sister Eve.
We go from our youngest Torah to our oldest Torah. This Torah is our Holocaust Torah that came from Poland, Czechoslovakia. Poland was the second largest Jewish community in Czechoslovakia before the Holocaust. Totally wiped out in the Holocaust as well. The Torah is actually 470 years old. And what was amazing is that Hitler wanted to make a museum of the people that he would wipe out. And when they would destroy synagogues throughout Europe, they would save Kiddush cups and candlesticks and Torahs. And after the war, in the Great Synagogue in Prague, they found 1,654 Torahs piled up in the synagogue there. The synagogue in London, England, took it upon itself to restore them to the best of their ability, and then ask of synagogues if they would be part of the Poland Torah Trust. Trying hard, right? Michael's working. There you go. Come on, you guys reach up there. Get that in there too. We are part of the Poland Torah Trust. This Torah came to Temple Shir Shalom in 1991 and was the second Torah that Temple received. And because of that, it's still a Torah we read on Yom Kippur as well.
Max Columbus, who's accompanied by his mother, Dr. Alicia Columbus, sister Bailey.
I believe, Max, your grandparents helped us acquire this Torah, this Russian Torah, in 1991. Thank you, Blanche and Alan. And this, we call our Russian Torah, it's about 180 years old today. It came to us from Odessa in the Ukraine, actually. But what's fascinating, about 15 years ago, as a scribe was looking over it, he told us it's written in a Dutch style. What does that mean? I don't know. It looks a little bit different in Hebrew, the font, but it's all Hebrew, except for the really well-trained eye. And because of that, we've learned maybe this Torah was actually not written in Russia, but was written in Holland, and then somehow got to Russia. We know for 70 years before it came to us, it lived in Russia. And so it still has that name, but it's part of the mystery of who we are as a people and our journey and where we've come from, and how there's always more that we learn about ourselves as well.
We invite up Eli Edelstein with his father, Mark.
big ones left. This is our Lithuanian Torah, or the Bass family Torah. Stuart Bass was president of Temple a number of years ago and wanted us to have a Torah from Lithuania, where his family came from originally, many of whom perished in the Holocaust. The help that we tell their story. We got this Torah. You got it? And it's about 170 years old, as I said, comes from Lithuania. But what's amazing is we don't know very much about it. You think about a Torah being actively read, every Shabbos as it lives in a synagogue, then the entire community of Lithuania is wiped out. What happened to these Torahs? They sat dormant for many, many years. And so get discovered, and you're able to find them and connect with them. And that's part of who we are. And so we're blessed to have this Torah to tell that story as well. So we honor that part of our community.
We invite up Evan Welch, along with his parents, Matthew and Libby, and his brother, Jacob.
One of our heaviest Torahs is our Jerusalem Torah. This Torah is actually one of our younger ones. It's only 28 years old now. We got this Torah from Jerusalem, 12 years old when we got it. And Rabbi Schwartz wanted us to have a Torah from Israel, as we did not have one at that point from Israel. And so we were able to acquire this then in honor of Rabbi's first grandchild, of Gabe. And so it honors that. If you guys want to dress those things too. It helps connect us to Israel, which is such a priority for our community.
Jenna Vinter, along with her parents, Jill and Alex, and her brother, Brock.
And our second heaviest Torah, our American Torah, our only Torah completely scribed in the United States, actually written in New York City, for a family connected to Temple who lived in Flint, Michigan. And this Torah was written in 1938 for someone at Temple's great-grandmother, commissioned by great-grandfather. When the family 26 years ago moved down here, they brought the Torah with them, and we're blessed to give it to us to help honor them.
For our last one, we get to call an audible. So we invite up Linda Kingston, if you want to bring Dave with you, for our last one.
This, of course, is the bridal gown Torah, or our baby Torah. Torah that was in Berlin, in the Progressive Synagogue there. And the story, of course, of this Torah, it was smuggled out of Nazi Germany by a gentleman who was vice president of the synagogue as they were leaving in 1937, when it was still possible for Jews to leave Germany, even though the Nazis were in power. The Holocaust had not begun yet. And so, knowing that he couldn't walk away with the Torah, he wrapped it up in his daughter's bridal gown. without telling her or anyone else, so that her body language wouldn't give that away to the Nazi guards. Many, many years later, that bridal gown sealed up, sat in her attic, and in 1988 she opened it up to find this Torah here. It wasn't on the wood, it was just the parchment. And so she brought that Torah, that scroll, to Rabbi Schwartz and wanted it to be living, in a sense, in our community. It was our first Torah, our only Torah for our first 3 years. The one that every bar and bat mitzvah had to read. A small Torah means small letters. So very few people choose to read it today. We read it on Rosh Hashanah because it's our first Torah, and it honors that tradition. Just as we read the Colon Torah on Yom Kippur as our second Torah, sort of the bookends of the first Torah for us and the oldest Torah for us. And so important as well. And we're blessed that as a community, we have so many Torahs that tell so many different stories about where we've come from, our journeys as a Jewish people. And now for us, something that our kids can connect with as well. Our children can, as they learn those stories, live those stories, embrace that tradition as well. Put the Torahs away now. Which one put away first? It's Lithuania, right? Got it. Front now. Jerusalem. You take crowns off, or you do it?
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you were born and reborn and reborn. Return again. Return to the land of your soul.
We begin with Havdalah. The service which separates the Sabbath from the rest of the days of the week, the holy from the profane. Selichot begins another time to distinguish, to separate. With this evening, we separate the holy days from the rest of the year. Our prayers tonight help us begin again. They help us to turn. They help us to set our mind and our thoughts straight. Selichot creates within us a sense of relationship, first with ourselves, then with everyone around us, and finally, with God. Maker of the universe, great and holy God, your wisdom rules the world. You give courage to the faint of heart. Your love sustains and shields us. Blessings without number you bestow upon us. We thank you for the life which you have given us and for the manifold bounties with which you have favored us during this past year. And now, as we approach the new year, we beseech you to grant us life and sustenance, strength and happiness. Remember us unto life, O God, who delights in life. Inscribe us in the book of life, you who are the giver of life. We give thanks for the Sabbath day that is now concluding, and we are grateful the peace and joy that it has brought to our soul. May its message be a part of our life as we embark on this new week. May its meaning lift us up to a more satisfying and more sensitive existence that helps us to create a good feeling for all who know us. May our celebration of Shabbat show us a way to a sweeter present. We give thanks for the sweetness in our lives as we raise the cup filled with wine, the cup filled with life.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen.
Blessed is the eternal our God, ruler of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. May we use our God-given gifts to help others and ourselves. May we take the time and the care to preserve our universe so that the spice of life in the air we live by may be inhaled without fear. Blessed is the eternal our God, ruler of the universe, creator of the variety of spices.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim. Amen.
The Sabbath is over.
A new day has arrived.
A new week has begun.
An old year is departing.
A new year is on the horizon. When heavy burdens oppress us and our spirits grow faint, and the gloom of failure settles upon us, help us to see through the darkness to the light beyond. To you, O God,
we turn for understanding. Turn to us and help us.
When we are tempted to suppress the voice of conscience, to call evil good and good evil, turn our hearts to the rights of others and make us more responsive to their needs. To you, O
eternal, we turn for guidance. Turn to us and help us.
And when we become immersed in material cares and worldly pleasures, forgetting you, may we find that all things bear witness to you, O God, and let them lead us back into your presence.
To you, O God, we turn for
meaning.
Turn to us
and
help us.
Now is the time for turning. Leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange. Birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. Animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for winter leaves and birds and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we've been wrong, and this is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again, and this is often painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing we have the ability to change. And these things are terribly hard to do, but unless we turn, we'll be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. Lord, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around, O Lord, and bring us toward you. Revive our lives as in the beginning, and turn us toward each other. Lord, for in isolation there is no life.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuva,
We turn to you to help us lift the burdens of our souls, for there is none of us so virtuous or proud whose heart does not cry out, despite himself, for forgiveness. May the light of the candles we light and see remind us that we not only have to be a light unto the nations, but we must shed light on our torments and our trials.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei meorei ha'esh, borei meorei ha'esh. Amen.
We rise together, responsively reading these reminders of our sins. For the sin which we have sinned against another human being under stress or through choice.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being, openly or in secret.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being in stubbornness or in error.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being through the evil meditation of the heart.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being by the word of mouth.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being by the profaning of your name.
For the sin which we have sinned against another human being by hating without cause. For all these sins, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
Ve'al kulam Eloah Selichot, Selach lanu mechalanu kapelanu. Ve'al kulam Eloah Selichot, Selach lanu mechalanu, Selach lanu mechalanu kapelanu.
Our God and Creator, each of us calls to you from the depths of his and her own being. Each of us alone in our thoughts, each one solitary in our prayers in this hour of Selichot. And yet, not alone and not solitary. Each one of us and a part of our heritage. The Jewish people speaks to us. A faith embraces us. A noble history sustains us. A holy covenant exalts us. Help us, O God, to be ever grateful for this shared destiny, for the courage that the centuries of stubborn resistance to evil have stored up. Join our spirits together, O Eternal, until they become an invincible power against the pain in the world. Help our hands together, join our hands together, O Eternal, that they may become a mighty instrument for the advancement of human life. And so as Shabbat ends, so do we turn to each other and say, Zait mir machal, please forgive me, to the ones that we love, to the ones we've hurt, to the ones we have wronged. And let our response be, Ich bin dir machal, I forgive you.
At this time, we take our candles and we pass the flame from one to another as we hear the words of Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Aseh Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase.
So now, with all of our candles illuminated, we can turn to those around us, those in our families, and say to one another, Zait mir machal, please forgive me. And the response is, Ich bin dir machal, I forgive you. We say it to one another, and as we do, the tradition is, when you forgive someone, you extinguish their candle. Traditionally, you'd blow their candle out, but that's not really a COVID thing to do. Even though we're all in the family, we don't want anyone expending all that air from their lungs. So wave it gingerly out as you forgive each other and say those words. Seid mir machol. Ich bin dir machol.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Vena Shuva, Vena Shuva. Chadish, Chadish, Yameinu Kekedem.
It was a good idea. Just because we burned the sanctuary down with our services, it still worked. Well,
I didn't say wave the candle, Rabbi. I said wave.
it's a way to begin that thoughtfulness again, that introspection, but of course recognizing the connections to the people who are here with us right now, our families, and the importance of admitting when we've been wrong and saying, please forgive me, and saying, I'm sorry. It's part of what the holiday is, what it reminds us of. And every time we hear the shofar blast, it's to wake us up to that reality as well. And so, Tekiah Gedolah. It's one of these unique services that we have together each year, always intimate in attendance. A Saturday night at 9:30, who thinks of going to temple? But when we do, when we gather together, it's a nice way to start the year. It's a nice way to remind ourselves of what matters most. And for those blessed to have the experience to look within. And for some, it's a reminder of when our temple community was a little smaller and services were always this size too. Whatever it reminds us of, it's that nice touch of connecting to community. Nice touch of reminding us of we come together even in a year when we can't be together as much as we like, but that we still stay connected, we still stay in touch, and we still stay as one with that in mind too. So we say it should be a year filled with blessing, a year of goodness, a year of hope, a year of health. So we begin to say to one another, Shana Tova Umituka, a good and sweet year.
Shana Tova.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov.
Ich bin dir Machol.
Ich bin dir Machol.